Well, the warnings have been coming. Today it's official. Famine has been declared in South Sudan. Around 100,000 people are at immediate risk of starvation, while another 5 million face severe food shortages. And aid authorities say the famine is entirely man-made. As Anne Barker reports.
In times of famine, it's children who are most at risk. Their tiny bodies are least able to survive severe malnutrition. In Al-Shabaab Hospital in South Sudan's capital, many are so weak they risk dying from starvation or disease. Dr. Felix Nyungura says the number of children affected by hunger is worsening.
Malnutrition is really bad because it has increased. I'm here for some years, but this year it has really increased.
Children like these are among 100,000 South Sudanese now on the brink of starvation in Unity State in the country's south. People are dying even as planes drop food aid from the sky. 3 years of ethnic fighting combined with drought and economic collapse have made it impossible to get food into war-torn areas. And yet Chalice McDonough from the World Food Programme says people don't need to die.
Humanitarian agencies have been struggling to access those two parts of South Sudan for years in order to be able to reliably get food and other kinds of humanitarian assistance to people. And if we had access to those areas, we could have kept this from happening. If we get better access now, we can turn it around. We can keep the famine from spreading to new areas, and we can keep it from intensifying where it is.
Instead, there are fears the famine will only spread. 42% of South Sudan's population, almost 5 million people, face a food shortage, and war and hunger have forced 3 million from their homes. Eugene Owusu is the United Nations humanitarian coordinator in South Sudan.
Food insecurity crisis today is largely because of the conflict, it's largely because of insecurity, it's also because of attacks on humanitarian workers and also the looting of humanitarian assets.
Many of those fleeing South Sudan are now living in UN refugee camps. 1.5 million people, including Rachel Makisa, have crossed the border to neighbouring countries like Uganda, with little hope of returning home.
There is no peace in our place right now. That's why I came to this place, to Uganda. So right now I don't have a hope for our country because there is fighting taking place in our place, and right now I don't know what exactly, so I don't have a hope for my life.
South Sudan has been embroiled in war since 2013 when President Salva Kiir sacked his deputy and split the country along ethnic lines. Aid agencies and the UN blame the government for the humanitarian crisis. Fighting has stopped farmers from planting crops and allowing food into war-torn areas. A peace agreement collapsed last year, bringing violence to a wider area, and the UN now warns of potential genocide if the war doesn't stop.
Anne Barker with that report.